Whoa! Hey, everybody. Welcome to the very first episode of UBU Podcast, where real conversations meet real respect and real growth. I'm William Rochelle, and I'm here with Greg Spiller. Greg, this is a big moment because this is the first time we're having a real conversation live in front of all of you. And just to let you know, Greg and I have been a part of each other's network for a while, but we had our first conversation last week. Is that right, Greg? Was it last week?
That's right. Yeah. So we've
Okay.
been connected for quite a while. Have engaged back and forth on LinkedIn with posts and comments. But yeah, we actually talked for the first time just the other day, and then this is kind of our extension of that introduction conversation.
And I think that's what makes this podcast different because we're not longtime friends. We're not colleagues. We're two people who saw value in open dialogue and decided to share it with the world. And we want to invite everyone listening to be a part of this conversation. This is a part where you're allowed to be you, say what you feel, share your truth, and challenge us. Because, um, as I said in our first conversation, I'm more of the introvert. So be ready for that. Greg is more direct, unfiltered,
That's fair.
ready to share, ready to share your opinion. Um, and we're not looking for agreement. What we're looking for is a space where we can all have conversations and agree to disagree if that happens. But at the end of the day, you be you, and we still love you for it. One of the things that we will not tolerate, which I think is worth sharing because this is a space where you can be your authentic self, is it has to be done without hate, without malice, without hate speech. Greg,
Yeah, there is a way that we can have dialogue from different viewpoints, from different vantage points, while still being respectful in the language we choose, the vocabulary, and how we venture back and forth. So anyone that's going to try to steamroll or bulldoze will be dealt with appropriately.
to dealt with.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So first question, Mr. Spiller. Just a guy as a service. Kind of what does that mean?
So just a guy comes from a scene in one of my favorite movies, Brain Candy, which is uh, from the comedy troupe Kids in the Hall out of Canada, sketch comedy. So in this movie, there is a scene where scientists are having a breakthrough with uh, the product that they're working on. And then out of the blue, a guy in the background shows up and enthusiastically cheers them on. Yeah, I think we got it. Let's go celebrate. And so all of them turn around because they don't know who he is and ask, "Who are you?" And his reply is, "Just a guy." Gives them an odd look back and then walks out of the scene.
Okay.
So, one of my favorite moments in that, just because it's so abstract and just random in that movie. So, fast forward to last year, someone that I'm connected with on LinkedIn um, launched a startup. And so I was trying to social engineer my way into having a job at the startup, right? But it was very like DevOps and like programming based. I don't have a lot of depth in that area for like DevOps and stuff like that. So I offered to be just a guy and I can cheerlead them. And that would be my job at the startup is just to cheerlead the actual people doing the work.
Okay.
So he actually came up with just a guy as a service, right? So that's like my offering to the world.
That's a good offering, man. I mean, everyone needs a service, and we're just raw people. Um, what what brought you to LinkedIn? Like, are you looking for a position? Are you using it for networking?
So that's the interesting thing about my personal relationship with LinkedIn is I've been on the platform for over a decade. When I first created my account and my profile, at the time, it was just considered an online resume and not much more, right? So people would create a profile, put up a picture, put your employment history, set it and forget it. And that's all the totality of what LinkedIn was, or the perception of it at the time. And for the longest time, that's how I left it. It was just another digital footprint of me and my resume of my work history. Then, kind of as Facebook became the prominent social media application and network, people started to understand the power of social media as far as like branding and engagement and things like that. So I started getting more active on the platform, uh, following a bunch of people, um, stuff that either I found the person interesting or their content interesting that I was being engaged with. Started reacting to it, leaving comments here and there. And then sometime in the last, even the pandemic, right, I had kind of a shift of what I was doing with my professional life. So I started content creating. Someone encouraged me to become a content creator. So I enabled those tools, and that fundamentally changed how I view LinkedIn and what I use it for and how I interact with it.
That's interesting. So you are using it for job search, or you're not using it for job search?
I have.
Okay.
Um, for job searching, it's not the only platform I use. I do like that um, in the current climate, like LinkedIn is that prominent of a professional identity that it's included in most recruiters and employers like survey of who you are, right? So I do use it heavily when I am actively job searching. I do get a lot of visitors who are recruiters and HR people that may be interested in my skill set.
Really?
Yes, but also, and the way that I've been using it since the pandemic, a um, it's a professionally creative outlet as a content creator. Um, I share a lot of things in a mentor type capacity, sharing community knowledge on a variety of spectrum of subjects, including technology, professional development, things like that. But also, I also view it as a digital stream of consciousness for myself,
Hmm.
right? So what you see in my profile, what you see in my content feed, how I engage in my own comments and other people's posts, like that is my true authentic self. I am the same in real life, on the job, in person,
Yeah,
as I present on LinkedIn. So it is transparent and authentic to who I am.
I love that. I love that. What? So, do you have any questions for me, Greg?
So I'm curious, like I'm sure many others in the audience are, to learn more about you professionally, like your career history. Like, and I know it's on the page, but I like to hear people tell their story of their journey because I find it much more fascinating to hear it firsthand.
That's a long journey. I'll give you the short version. Okay. Um, I work for a $4 billion company called the Wonderful Company. And the Wonderful Company owns Fiji Water, Teleflora, which is the largest uh, global floral delivery service. They own Wonderful pomegranate juice. So the big round 3 ring round bottles. They also own um, Sun. I'm sorry, Wonderful Pistachios, and they used to be the largest distributors of Sunkist oranges. So they owned the co-op for that. And I don't know if I see Sunkist anymore. So they might have changed it to the Wonderful Company or Paramount Farms. Um, I was there for some time, and the great part about working there was I have a passion for customer service. Kenneth just asked a question. Give me just a second. Sorry, guys, we're live, and I want to make sure that he can get in properly. Let me send him the correct link. If you can talk for a second, I'm going to send him the correct link.
Sure.
Sorry.
So, I mean, right off the bat, those are some pretty marquee names that you've been involved with. Um, I know in my own professional journey, I've been involved with some pretty marquee Fortune 100 companies myself, but not exclusive. Like I've been with groups that are small startups with less than 50 employees and everything in between. So I have the full experience of organizations large and small, and have come to recently know even the solopreneurs. Right, so I think having that exposure to that kind of micro and macro scale for business certainly reveals a lot, and a lot of wisdom can be gleaned from those types of
Yeah,
environments.
yeah. Kenneth just got on. So, Kenneth, just so that you know, I broke away from the conversation just to make sure that you had the right link, but you found it. So I'm glad you're here. And comment anytime. And if you want to join us, let us know. We'll invite you in. Um, so, with the Wonderful Company, I was there for a while. And the great part about it was the Wonderful Company had to scale their operation 6 times a year. And I'm going way back, so I'm going to count it, right? So they were the premier floral provider for the United States. When we started, FTD was, but Teleflora took that over. I don't know if you remember FTD, but he was a little gold man running through the city with flowers. Uh, they would have to scale double, triple, quadruple, um, starting in for Thanksgiving, then for Christmas, then for Valentine's Day, then for Easter, then for Mother's Day, and then for Father's Day. And so um, every season, we would get a little bit of a downtime. We would look at where we were. We'd have to do our projections and forecasts, and then we have to bring in an extra 250 people in order to support the influx of phone calls that we had. And Teleflora did multiple layers, so that's what was so great about it. So we had a membership base, so you had to be a membership florist. We had a direct to consumer base, which is why we had to scale up with the 250 extra employees. We had a brand partnership and advertising with, a, well, I don't know if I can say it because I don't know if it's public. Um, then we had marketing and advertising that we offered for our membership. So if they wanted to be a part of our marketing and our advertising, because they had to buy the product, right? And then they had to advertise the product. I mean, Teleflora had such a great business model. And then finally, we offered credit card services for them. And so it was under the Teleflora umbrella. So they got the best rates. If you don't understand anything about merchant services, you know, your rates differ depending upon how much you're going to spend. But if you're under a billion, we're live. If you're under $1 billion company, those rates will vary. Um, Someone told me while I was there, You are phenomenal. And it's very interesting. It's very interesting, that first person that tells you that you're phenomenal. And the person that told me that was not a person that worked there. It was a recruiter that we were using to bring in the extra staffing. And, I was in charge of being in front of 250 people and doing the training on a mic and getting them up and ready and then doing the triage afterwards. Um, and she told me, not only are you phenomenal, but if you stay here, you will become a dinosaur. And I was like, what's a dinosaur? And she said, dinosaurs are extinct. And I was like, oh, well, I don't want to be extinct, but it was safe. It was safe. It was a wonderful, it was a wonderful company. It really was. I loved working there, and I didn't want to leave because I knew every day that my paycheck would clear. The Resnicks would donate $40 million to the Los Angeles Museum of Art. My check was going to clear every week. Um, they own. It just got kind of. They just got. They just got. Slammed because they own the water rights to a lot of the Northern California waters.
Okay.
And because of the LA fires, people were like, these billionaires own all the water rights. And I'm not going to, that's their business. I don't have
Right. Well, I
an
think
opinion on that.
to your point, right? Certainly a lot of people can relate to having the stability of a paycheck, right? An organization
Yeah.
that's stable, right? And if you are comfortable with where you're at and you're happy with what you're doing and they're happy that you're doing it for them, right? There's no shame in that game, right? And why would
Right.
you want to leave?
But
yes.
okay. But I did leave. And it's not on my resume anywhere. And I'm going to share this with the world for the first time. I left to work for a company called 1-800 US Search. And if you ever watched the Ricky Lake show back in the day, at the end
I
of it,
remember Ricky Lake, yes.
yeah, at the end of it, they would say, are you looking for your long lost father? Call 1-800 US Search. And I was there for approximately 30 days. 30 days, and they called about 30 of us into one room, and they said, we're letting everyone go. The company's not doing well. And for about 10 seconds, and I want everyone to hear this, for about 10 seconds, I said to myself, how could I be at a company for years? And why would they take me away from that and in 30 days just let me go? The truth is, I would have stayed at that company, the wonderful company Teleflora, if I hadn't been asked to join 1-800 US Search. Leaving 1-800 US Search, I wasn't in a panic. And I instantly got an offer to join a company that was doing online dating. And that was in the early 2000s. I accepted it, and I kept looking for another job. I'm like, why aren't I getting another job? Why aren't I getting another job? This is terrible. They have posters on the wall, and I'm used to seeing art on the wall. And the company became jdate.com, which is one of the largest Jewish dating sites in the world. Christianmingle.com, which is the largest Christian dating site in the world, and then a host of 30 other sites. That one decision to join allowed me to totally restructure their customer service department in my vision. So I wasn't given a blueprint. I was told customer service is broken, fix it. And I went in and I fixed it. And I made it the key differentiator between our brand and every other brand out there at the time.
Nice.
Once I fixed that and I created someone to sit and look over it, I created a travel and events department. In that travel and events department, what we did was we took all the singles and we said, do you guys want to go to an event at Nikki Beach in Miami, Florida? 200 other people are going to go. Join us. And they would pay and they would go. And then it became, do you want to go to Japan? Do you want to go to Thailand? Do you want to go to the Bahamas? And that was something that emerged out of me, number one, finishing what I had started, which was fixing customer service. Number two, not wanting to sit around and get a paycheck. So I created something new to occupy my time and bring more revenue. And third, it created a catalyst for other departments and for people that joined at the ground level to have some type of career path. And in our customer service department, I had a, a guy from Duke University that joined customer service. And it's funny because the the executives, I was an executive there, but at the time I wasn't. Um, they were like, why are you hiring someone from Duke? He's not going to stay. And he wanted to work there. And I'm going to give his name only because it's important. His name is Evan, Evan, Mark, Marc, Katz, Katz. And I had to let Evan go at one point because he basically outgrown the position.
Mm.
And when I let him go, I said to him, you have done what you could do here, and you're going to do so much more. And the reason why I say his name is because 6 months later, I saw him on the Tyra Banks show as the leader in online matchmaking.
Wow.
And then he wrote books. And then he was on, I think he was on Oprah. I don't want to over um, sell him, but eventually I even hired him to come on some of our travel events so he could be the matchmaker there and talk about what do women want, what do men want. He was great. And the reason why I think that's so important is because not every closed door is closed, and not every opportunity that says it's over is the end. And
Right.
sometimes it's taking you to a better place. And so I knew that when I didn't feel bad when he was leaving. I felt like he was going to fly, and he did more than what I expected. Um, I oversaw the entire operation by the end of my tenure there. In 2006, we're still talking about my career, right?
Yes. Yes.
Because you can make me stop anytime you want. But um, in 2006, I decided that I was going to leave. And I made that decision early on for several reasons. But one is the lady from Teleflora that said, hey, if you stay for too long, you're going to become a dinosaur. And in 2006, we were featured in 4 different live newscasts on the same night because we were having a huge event on Christmas Eve because the Jewish community doesn't have anything to do on Christmas Eve. So
Right.
we had an event at the House of Blues in Los Angeles, an event in Miami, and then we had a co-event in New York City at, I forget the name of it, but the Cathedral in New York that is a disco. Um, And so all three were live simultaneously streamed live. So they were on the screen, so each city could see what was happening. And then it was also on their local news. That same year, we had a CEO by the name of David Siminoff. Was one of the first investors in Google, and his wife Ellen Siminoff was the fifth employee of Yahoo. So he would fly in once a week on his private plane that he flew himself, and then go back to Cupertino up north, because we were in Beverly Hills, and he wrote he wrote that sorry he had to be featured. He wanted to be featured in Forbes magazine. And when he was featured in Forbes, he was talking about the areas of the company that he needed to improve on. And then he was talking about all the areas that made the company a success. And every single area that he said made the company a success were the areas that I created. And when I say I created, I mean, no one told me to do it. I just did it. And there were multiple areas of the operation that were that were flying and flying at a very high level. In August of 2007, so I decided to quit in 2006, right? In August of 2007, the fastest growing internet site in the world was a company called GodTube, GodTube.com. And they were featured in Dateline, Nightline, um, all the Christian news. And I'm not talking about faith right now. I mean, J8 was Jewish, Christian Mingle was Christian. It just so happened that GodTube was Christian. And they asked me to join them because they were behind in production by 6 weeks. They had no customer service department. They had 80 people in Virginia that were working from home, and they weren't keeping up with everything. And within a couple of weeks, we got them to a 2-hour turnaround on all their production. We got the company, I authored the back end support that allowed the company to do more with less. We created the entire customer service element, which didn't mean increasing headcount. It just meant, these guys they could do more with less. And that was also during the economic downturn. So in
Which one?
2000, well, just 2007 is when I
Okay,
left.
gotcha.
2008 was when the economic downturn hit. We were promised $36 million. I think this is public knowledge. And we got 18 million of it. So if you're ever part of a startup, people will always tell you, what's your runway? And that means how much money do you have to get to the next level. So the company eventually sold to a company called the Salem Communication Group. And right before the sell, we had to make some strategic decisions because we were top heavy. So I exited, and the person that was right below me, Alex, I won't give his last name because I haven't asked him. Um, I gave him my position. And that was the same thing I did at J8. Before I left, I asked the team, I said, hey, I've I've positioned all these people to be able to run the operation. If I leave, will you promote them? And Adam Berger at the time, who was the CEO, said yes. And so I was fine because I felt like I was holding up a position for them. I mean, the only next step for Gerardo or any of the other guys was to take my seat, and I was sitting in it. Um, the only option to save GodTube at the time was to reduce expenses, and it was the choice between me and him. And you can save not just him, but a couple of other people with my paycheck, and so I let it go. That led me here, and eventually jumping on the e-commerce bandwagon. I started working for a company that wanted me to revamp their customer service department because that's my jam. So I believe that customer service is the heartbeat.
Of
And
course.
then I ended up running the entire operation. And the reason why that happens, and I'll tell anyone that asks, customer service knows where all the problems are.
Yes.
So because of that, in the e-commerce department, I was able to know that we need to increase our productivity in our supply chain area, in our logistics department, in our order confirmation, in our email confirmations, because this is what's generating all these phone calls. We need to be more aggressive in our product development and how we name products, because people would get people would get a couch and they wouldn't recognize that it was a child's couch. So it's kind of like you buy a sofa for your living room. You're like, oh my God, it's only $45. How could that be? It's beautiful. And they don't read the fine print that it's it's for a child. So, taking a picture and putting a child on it and seeing that a 5-year-old sits on this couch is easier because folks don't read. They don't understand dimensions. So eventually I ended up owning the company. It was doing 26 million a year. And in 2020, that dropped down to 10. And so if you understand math, you have $26 million worth of bills and then $10 million coming in. And it just doesn't add up. And even Walmart and Target, for the first 10 years, Amazon weren't profitable. They were breaking even. And this company was solely owned by me. So in 2020, I had to make the decision to close.
I would definitely agree with you, right? Like customer service can make or break your organization. Your customers have an interest in you, right? And they're interested in your product. And they'll tell you what they don't like about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and if you don't listen to that and adjust to it, then you're going to suffer for it. But I
Absolutely.
kind of want to circle back when you talk about how these opportunities kind of manifested for you. The way you describe it seems more just kind of like a flow of the moment, and I'm just gonna let the wind drive my sails type of approach to it. Whereas,
It was more data driven.
sure, sure. Well, I guess kind of juxtaposed to kind of how I have journeyed through my own career, right? It was much more targeted and focused and intentional, right? Starting with my first job in technology at a voice over IP company in the late 90s, early 2000s. That was kind of pioneering how telephony works today. Right? They were R&D in that in 1998, and it was just a young group of kids, college kids, that were whip smart and had, um, were paying attention to the emerging technology that was available and saw where it was going and how it was going to be used, and immediately pivoted into that. So being a part of that group, I really understood like how technology can just in a heartbeat arrive and then make an impact and fundamentally change things. So with that, um, I took the mindset of like always being mindful and watchful of what's on the horizon for technology. And I've tried to use that as my North Star for opportunities. So every move that I've made in my own career has either been to attach myself to a new technology that's going to be impactful into the world of business and be on the forefront of the people who are skilled and learned in that, or I was able to level up in skill set and influence, right, and tenure in something. most of my career moves have been one or both of those, but very intensive. Right, this is a new technology. I'm going to jump into that, or this is a place where I can further flesh out and expand my skill set and my vertical reach.
So I don't see that to be any different than what I just said, because when you think about it, so J8 and Christian Mingle in 2000, there was no such thing as online dating. That was brand new. Today, it's the norm. GodTube was a video sharing social network. That's TikTok today. And then 12 years ago, e-commerce was brand new. People were still like, do people buy online? Now it's the only way that they do it. We were one of the first on Amazon, and we were one of the top sellers on Amazon. Amazon actually would come to us and take us to dinner so they can get a part of our catalog. The reason why IBG stores actually became successful is because Amazon had a partnership with Wayfair. Do you know who they are?
The name sounds
Wayfair.
familiar.
Okay, so Amazon had a partnership with Wayfair. Wayfair became extremely um, they became a publicly traded company and started competing against Amazon. So Amazon kicked them off, and we had the exact same vendors as Wayfair. So when Amazon kicked Wayfair off, they lost all of their home goods catalog, and they were like, "Well, where do we get it from?" And they were like, "You guys." And so that actually was a catalyst for the success of the business. And then you had Walmart asked us to be one of the first joiners of their platform and of Jet. So Jet and Walmart came to us separately but simultaneously. I don't know if you ever heard of Jet, but Walmart
Mhm.
purchased Jet eventually for their technology. So I believe in my case, I've always felt like I've been on the forefront of technology or industries that were emerging, and I got out before they became watered down.
Interesting.
The only, the only, the only, the only industry that I, the only time it's been 100% what am I going to do is when I lost my own business during 2020. And the reason why that happened was because there was a drop in our revenue. And the drop in our revenue was not due to mismarketing. The drop in the revenue was because we partnered with companies like Ashley Furniture or I'll just use Ashley Furniture because they're a pretty big name. But Ashley Furniture, who brought in $1 million a month for us, said we want you to take our stuff offline because we're going online because we have to close all of our stores. So our partners became our competition. At the same time as our partners becoming our competition, um, and I think most individuals can understand this better than businesses. Um, Macy's and TJ Maxx did, I think, a Chapter 13, a restructuring, or some type of bankruptcy, and then the industry became scared, so they lowered everyone's credit ratings. So where I had $1 million worth of credit for certain companies, it went down to 100,000, and the money wasn't coming in. The credit rating was reduced. Our partners became our competition. It was just to create. It was just a total cluster. And then, whenever you're in e-commerce, you only get paid when an item ships. So if you only get paid when an item ships, and your bill, the only source of support for this company, when they shut down Georgia, we couldn't ship anything from our distribution center in Georgia. Then Georgia opened back up and they shut down California. So we couldn't ship anything from California. Then Florida got shut down. So one by one, every time we thought we'd get ahead, we would get behind.
Right, right.
And then to finalize that, to put the nail in the coffin, you had people with deep pockets. And people with deep pockets were able to prepay for inventory and say, hold 500,000 units of workout equipment. And workout equipment in 2020 was really, really big. I
Oh,
mean,
sure.
we sold so much of that because all the gyms had shut down and people were working out at home. We just couldn't get it. We had the sales, we had the targeted marketing, we had the reach, but we couldn't get it out of the door. So, so there's that.
Now, let me ask you, kind of circling back to the question, when did you come to LinkedIn and why at the time?
I've been on LinkedIn for several years, since probably it started. Um, and I haven't really used it because most of the time I've been poached. So someone has come to me and said, hey, I've heard about you. Do you want to come here? Last year, or maybe a year and a half ago, um, I found myself looking for a job. And I had done 1 year consulting at a great company called Celeb Luxury. Um, but at the end of the year, the contract was up and I was back on the market. So in that moment, I decided I wanted to make sure that my mind stayed clear and that I had something to do every morning. So I would get up every morning and I would just write an article about what it's like to be my age of 22 looking for a job. If anyone believes I'm 22, you're my best friend. Yay! Because it's different. It's really different. You know, back from Teleflora to JDay to GodTo to IBG stores. Because I was with IBG for 12 years, almost 13. So I was in one of those like, hey, who cares? And now it's a little bit different because people look at your resume and they're like, it's long and you're old. And, how are you going to fit into our demo? And so I just wanted to write about that. And it kind of shifted because at first it was like, let me tell my story about, how great I am. And well, that got old quick, because I don't want it to be all about me. Then it became, what am I feeling today? And that really took my newsletter off because I never said I'm feeling down. But what I would say is tomorrow's going to be a better day. And today is temporary. And you are an overcomer. So I was writing things to other people, but really the messages and almost everything were for me. Um, it was
Okay.
reminding me that I'm going to be good. It was reminding me that this is temporary. It was reminding me that you've overcome things before and you're going to overcome it again. Yes, Michael, Wayfair does equal furniture. Um, it At times, I've written things that were brutally honest. Today is not a good day. and
Right.
and it's funny because I try my best. And I think that's what we all should do. We try our best. I try my best to wake up every morning saying, "Man, it's going to be great." And you're not working, and that's fine, and bills are coming in, and that's fine. But some days you deal with it better than others, you know. Um, you know, I, I think the biggest part of LinkedIn that makes me not upset, because that's not a good word, but I don't have a better word for it right now, um, is that I get more messages from people asking me for things. And I have a huge open to work circle around my face.
Right.
And you know, when you said, "Oh, you get people that contact you," and I'm like, "I'm open for work. Why isn't my phone ringing off the hook?" And the few calls that I've had, people give me the greatest compliment. They say, "You are a unicorn. You are someone that I can tell has done it. Um, but you also seem overqualified." And I said, "Well, I'll accept the job." And they'll
Right.
literally tell me, "We're not going to give it to you because we don't think you're going to stay." Um, and I've had friends tell me that, friends, where I say, "Hey, your job is hiring for this," and I just, you know, applied for it. Can you recommend me? And they're like, "Sure," but they're not going to call you because you're overqualified. And so that's a compliment until you realize that, you know, my lights just went off. They didn't, by the way.
I
There's
can
lights
relate to
everywhere.
that for sure.
Um, you know, it's a compliment until you realize I just applied for an OnlyFans account and they denied me because I'm too old.
I had very similar experiences during the pandemic. Right before the pandemic, I separated from SAP, which was like at the time the pinnacle of my career. I had been intentionally professionally developing myself into that role. It was like my dream job. And then as quickly or as quickly as it happened, right, it disappeared just as fast. And then the pandemic hit and everything shut down. And that was a very difficult time across the board for a lot of people to find work. And kind of similar to your experience, right? I applied for literally thousands upon thousands of jobs. I had at least one or two interviews every month consistently throughout the pandemic with multiple organizations, different types of roles. One of the things that I pride myself on and been very intentional about is being multidimensional. So I can pivot into a lot of spaces and a lot of skill sets because of the way I've built myself professionally. So I would have roles like hardcore engineering to technical project management to um, technical account management and all kinds of things in between. Uh, when I'm having these conversations, very similar, like you have an extensive background, you have an amazing skill set, we love the conversation you're having with you. Um, we think you'd be a great asset, but we're going to go somewhere else. Right? And it was like that for years and years. And so during the pandemic, much like yourself, like on LinkedIn, it was a catharsis for me to just be active and create content, just for my mental health and peace of mind. Like
Exactly.
I have all this knowledge, and because of how much I enjoy and appreciate mentorship, and to pay tribute to the people that mentored me along the way, I started paying it forward with things that I knew, things that I found that were interesting to me, that I believe someone else could find value in. So a lot of my content started reflecting that, right? And even to this day, um, when I come across things I feel like everyone should know about, I'll definitely share it. How I came to know my good friend Kenny was I had created and hosted a series of LinkedIn events um, last year, going back for about a year or so. where I was having an online discussion, open forum about looking for a job, right? And people that were coming to these things were had been extendedly unemployed. Similar situation to myself, where it was getting crunch time to where like bills were past due and things were getting shut off and hard decisions needed to be made. So not only were we just kind of collectively screaming into the void about how terrible the job market is, but also kind of trauma bonding about our experiences, and then also like sharing resources, right, and trying to get people connected to either polish their resume or get connected to maybe someone that might know someone that might know someone that has a job, things like that. And so part of those discussions then kind of extrapolated into um, company culture and top-down type management and perceptions of that leadership and how we interact with our peers and then how are we represented or not represented in the workplace. And then on the other side of the table, we have people who are recruiters and HR people, and like this is how they perceive candidates, and like this is what you look like on paper to the other side of the table. And these are things you can do to punch it up and make yourself more marketable and authentic and hireable, right? So we had that going for a long time, while also trying to work on multiple revenue streams. So I started a consultancy. I've worked in a couple of different jobs um, to get the bills paid and things like that. So just kind of exploring the space, like quite literally, professionally, to not only put myself out there as a professional, but as an individual, right? Like this is who I am. This is the work, the body of work that I've done. This is uh, what I can bring to the table. These are my accomplishments, and let's see if we can find alignment with what you need in your organization.
It's interesting because I've had the opposite, where people have told me, "Why don't you dumb down your resume?" And you said punch it up, right? Um, and I tell them, how can I dumb it down? Because I have 30,000 followers, all across LinkedIn. You can see what I've done, and I think it makes it harder for me to say, yes, I'm a customer service rep. Um, it just how do you dumb down your resume in the digital age with everything that goes across it?
It's a double-edged sword because most of the people who are on the employer side of the hiring process, particularly in my silo in technology, the first line people, the technical recruiters, the HR people, like they are not technical people. They are more familiar with like keywords and use
Right.
those to find candidates, but they cannot have technical discussion in any like depth at all. Um, and my personal opinion is that they're very limited in scope and how they can assess someone's technical ability and worth in order to be able to present to the hiring team who would most likely be very technical. Right? So there's those kinds of hurdles and gaps that make it difficult to get to the people that need the talent, right? In order for like talent such as myself to be able to make the talk and make the case for being hired. But with that, like I also have the additional challenge of being so diverse horizontally and vertically in my skill set that the majority of hiring managers, or at least the frontline part of the process, like they don't understand what I'm about and what I can do. As an example, like why haven't you been a system administrator for 20 years? Like, oh, I can do that and I've been successful in that, but that's not the only thing I'm good at. I am
Right.
good at that, but that's not the only thing. And so those types of challenges, particularly in my case, right, having to spend extra time, often in vain and to disappointment, explaining like, yes, I have the skill set you're looking for, and so much more. Give me the opportunity to talk to your hiring manager, and I will make a believer out of
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know if you do this, but I get from recruiters, man, this is a great conversation. You're excellent. You sound great. And then nothing.
it. Yes,
It doesn't get past does not get past the recruiter. All right. So one of the things I'd like to do is pivot right now because talking about talking I have an Akita, everybody. Again, this is live TV or live broadcast, and he is special. Um, is I no longer want to talk about how terrible the
sure,
job
sure,
search
sure.
is because I'm in this new age of thinking positive and talking positive and understanding that everything comes at the right time. So everything will come at the right time. I'm fine, everybody. Um,
Yeah. So I guess
I need a
before.
job. I do need a job because the OnlyFans thing did not work. And so does Michael LeBlanc. And Michael, I'm going to ask you to write me up something about yourself and send it to me directly. I will rewrite it as an article for you and send it out to my network um, to see if we can help get you a job. So for some reason, it's easier for me to find jobs for other people um, because I think I think it's easier for me to tell someone how great Greg is than it is for me to say how great I am because that sounds counterintuitive. Like you're not supposed to brag. Um,
It can be received the wrong way for sure.
yeah, yeah. So anyway, Michael, send me your information and let's get you that job. Um,
So
we need to work together on it, and you're not alone, my friend. My question
so
to everyone else out there is there any topic, because we're going to talk about everything. This is our first one, and I keep cutting Greg off. I understand that, Greg. But I'd love to hear from you guys about topics that you think we should talk about, and some of the things before Greg hangs up on me, and then Greg, we're going to get right back to you. Some of the things that I think that we should talk about, which is important, are women in leadership and gender equality, LGBTQ rights, abortion and reproductive rights, gun rights and gun control, Social Security and Medicare, the US economy and inflation, the job market versus AI automation. Well, I'm not going to talk about climate change. You can, Greg. I don't know enough about it. I do believe in it, but I don't know enough about it to talk about it. Um, and eventually, um, DEI, because that's such a hot button topic. And I want to get everyone's opinion on all of these topics. So part of the UBU is, us talking about things that are going on in America, but what do you think? And I have a good friend of mine. His name is Mr. Ripple. And I have a few good friends, by the way, that are very, very supportive of our new administration. And we're great friends and we will always be great friends. But on certain topics, we agree to disagree. And that's the entire concept that we can still be friends. We can still go through this, but let's understand the perspective from the other side. Greg, did I make you forget everything you were about to say?
no, no, not at all. Um, I definitely want to have those future discussions. Absolutely, I think those are
Yeah,
great topics.
not today. We've been on for an hour now, which is actually, I'm surprised it's gone on. So, I mean, it's kind of quick. It seems
Well,
like.
Yeah, for sure. But where I wanted to go next in our conversation today was if we can each share like how we network on the platform, talking about Michael and you offering to help him, right? That's a great example of how do we network on this platform, and how do we do it with intentionality.
Go ahead. You share. How do you network
Sure.
on it? I think you're
So,
probably better at it than I am.
for myself, right? I like I said, I do a lot of engagement. So I have people that I'm connected to, and of course they're connected to other people. And so when I'm doing engagements on posts and comments, I'm looking at what the other people are adding to the conversation, good, bad, or indifferent, and then if what they contribute to the discussion is intriguing to me or poignant, right, or um, educates me in some sort of way, right? Then I'll drill down further into their profile and learn more about them. And at that point, I'm usually interested enough to extend a connection off them. But so with the people that I am connected with, and through the graces of the LinkedIn algorithm, I actually do get to see their content. Right? I try to be supportive of everyone that I can, with at least a reaction. If the post topic is something that I feel like I want to comment on or can share insight or add value to, I absolutely will. It's a 50-50 crapshoot of whether it's just me making light of it with humor or sarcasm, or if I'm actually like adding intellectual wisdom and value to it. Um,
Right.
but with that, right, I'm very intentional with how I engage with others. I try to be supportive, particularly when other people are having milestones in their own professional journey. I try to go to other people's events to show them I support them, things like that. Um, I was just talking with a new connection yesterday, right? Every single time that I make a connection, whether they send one to me or I send one to them, every time it gets accepted, immediately right away, I send a thank you. Really quick,
Mm,
I'm already there because I have to click a button to accept, right? Or I get a notice that they accept. It takes me an additional 4 seconds. Thank you for the connection. That little piece of intentionality, that human connection, has made all the difference in my experience with LinkedIn and the people that I'm connected with. Not everyone engages back, right? I always send a thank you, and not everyone engages back, but I've never been disappointed in the ones that do.
interesting. I told you you'd be better at it than I was. So, um, for me, my networking has been more through my newsletters and putting myself out there, and then connecting with those that reply or ask to join. I get tons and tons of emails every day. I don't know about you, but just tons. And is most of the emails that I get are people selling me something or wanting me to look at their products. And like I told you earlier, I don't know where they're getting this from because I have the big open to work thing on my picture. So for some reason, I feel as if I'm not putting what I'm putting out there is not generating what I want back, which is a position. I've also written a couple of articles about why I'm looking for a job, and um, had not great success, but I have a huge following. I mean, I have a huge following, and a lot of people read my articles every day. It's just it's not attracting the hiring manager that I'm looking for to say, hey, come join our team. Did that answer your question? Because sometimes I just talk.
It does. It does. And I think, different approaches can have different yields, right? And so I guess maybe it kind of, the bottom line is what do we expect from LinkedIn, right? And that kind of circles back to why we're here. For me personally, and I've said this many times in other types of audio events and directly conversations, right? The way that I've come to coexist with LinkedIn is that I have zero expectations of the platform. Literally none. I don't expect anyone to see my content. I don't expect anyone to react to it. I don't expect anyone to comment to it. I don't expect any connections to engage back, right? I set zero expectation. So with that, I'm never disappointed because I don't expect to get anything on the platform. But through that mindset, right, I don't have any reservations about how I present and how I interact with it. Like I said, so I actively seek out people in conversations and contribute. And through that, the most amazing and significant grouping of opportunities have happened through LinkedIn, through that approach for me. Every success that I've had post-pandemic has been directly from LinkedIn. And it's such a mind trip for me that I don't expecting anything out of it, and I've gained everything from it.
So I'm going to ask Felipe, are you asking me this question, or are you asking the question to Greg, or to both of us?
I think my answer to that is I'm building relationships in a meaningful way and without expectation, and that's why I am receiving the reward that I do get from it.
I think I'm putting myself out there with two-way communication, but mostly through my newsletter, which might be considered one-way communication. So if someone responds to me, then I respond to them. I've met a couple of people through my newsletter, and we've met for coffee, and both of us were looking for jobs, and we just talked about, how can we support each other through this time. So I'm putting myself out there, but I'll just say it again repetitively, most of the communication I get are people that are wanting something from me, as opposed to collaborating, or like right now, Greg didn't ask for anything from me. He said, let's collaborate. So in that case, it's less of a two-way communication. It's more of a thank you, but it's not the right time for me. And that's polite. That's just a polite response. I have nothing to give. So your pitch isn't beneficial for you or for me. It would be a waste of time at this moment. I hope that answered your question, Felipe. Anything else, sir?
That will kind of like dovetail into the last thing I want to talk about is what do we do with our connections after the initial album?
What do we do with our connections?
Yeah, so we take all this time to make a profile, we take time to make content, we take time to reach out and connect to people. And after they accept, you say, hello, I'm Bill, hello, I'm Greg, I see you do this, I see you do that. Is that the end of that experience? Or like you and I here, like we've decided, hey, there's a lot we can do to collaborate together. How do we expand upon that? What else can we explore, right, together?
Together?
Yeah.
the sky's the limit together.
Exactly,
I mean,
exactly.
the
So,
sky's the
but
limit,
what we're talking
and
about, like, and especially with the audience, right? Like, don't just say hello and that be the end of it.
right, right. I would love people like Felipe to be like the third person on this screen, um, or Kenny, or I don't want it to just be me and you. I'd love this to be a
Yeah.
forum and people really um, helping us. You know, Michael LeBlanc helping us, you know, through our own journey and then sharing their journey. Because I think our stories matter. And having it just be me and you, it'll be great for the first two series. But, you know, I really believe it needs to be more fully vetted. Um,
Absolutely. So, on that
and,
note, real quick,
uh-huh.
future episodes and future topics, I'm absolutely reaching out to people, and people can reach out to us to be a part of these discussions as we continue with this podcast. I think for today, if you're open to it, Bill, we can um, have some people join us if they have time and we want to keep the conversation going. I'd love to have some more people come up.
Do it.
Um, so is there the link?
Understand, understand, everyone, that this is live, unscripted, and I'm not knowing who he's going to pull up. So it could be a beat up on me, or it could be great.
No, no one's going to beat up on anybody.
All right. Do you want me to invite someone special?
Well, I think Michael and Kenny and Felipe have been very active in the comments. I'd love to have them pull in live and have them
Are
all
they
direct.
interested?
Sure. I know
All
Kenny
right.
won't say no.
All right. I'm going to send a link to Kenny right now. Kenny, be ready.
But I will shout out Felipe if he chooses not to come on stage. Felipe Copino, a fantastic voice, um, not only for kind of like the HR space,
Hold
but
on for a second.
also
Felipe, would you send me an email so I can send you on LinkedIn so I can send you a yeah, send me an email and I'll send you an invite. Kenny, I already just sent you an invite, and then Michael LeBlanc, if you can send me an email real quick on LinkedIn, I'll send you an invite too so you can join.
oh, okay, so it's like Felipe doesn't have time to it, but definitely I wanted to give a shout out to Felipe. He has his own events where he shares a wealth of knowledge about being a candidate and what employers look for and how you can best present yourself in
Michael,
that
you
market.
could just talk. You don't have to appear on camera if that's what you want to. Just turn your camera off.
Yeah, just turn your camera off. Not a problem.
But your voice, we want to hear from you.
You don't have to come up. You don't want to. There's
Yeah.
some,
This is actually the best part was we wanted
yeah.
people to it's not we don't want to just be me and Greg.
I think the you and I part we've covered all the beats that we had talked about before. So, um, Mr. Kenneth Gunner, what are you?
Who's Brian Bing? Does he want to be a part? I can send him an invite if he sends me an email on LinkedIn. I think Kenny stepped away.
Not entirely sure.
I think you have the
So
link too, right? You can share it with them.
this week or this past week has been a pretty transformative week for me through the power of LinkedIn. So I was
Okay.
able. I've been connected with a few folks for about 2 years now that have started their own business, right? That's tech based. brilliant engineers, right? I've been paying attention to them for quite a while, intentionally engaging with them and their content, and saw an opportunity, right? That they're now getting ready to ramp up with their business, right? And are now kind of opening the doors to other people. Um, and so I took the opportunity to kind of inject myself into the spotlight there, and was successful with that gamble and got invited to join. So I'm super happy about that. I don't have details to share at this time because it's still in progress. We're working on it, but I am extremely excited about the opportunity and foaming at the mouth and trying to bit to get part of it. Like it's that exciting
Good.
and enticing to me. Also, you and I, right, starting this podcast series, right? It's a great collaboration. There's a lot of things that I've been thinking about, talking about, and having a forum to do that. And this just, it was the perfect timing. And I think we are aligned in a lot of ways to have those kinds of discussions, absolutely. And thirdly, through LinkedIn again, I got connected with a publisher that I've been talking with for about over a year. Um, that I now have gotten to agreements with for my third book, which will be my own solo publication that I'll restart writing.
Your own solo publication. So forgive me, I've not read your books. I will. Um, sorry.
That's
Um,
okay.
so the so kind of talk to us about your books. What were they about, and then were they collaborations or?
So also, right, those that opportunity came through the power of LinkedIn. Connected with Bonnie Ray, who is the publisher of an anthology series. And each edition in that series is a collection of authors. So each author shares a story as a single chapter in the edition, right? So my first um, published in volume 7 of the Route of the Wake series, um, I shared a story, and the way that it's written is very, uh, I guess, technical document oriented, about a uh, severe satellite network interruption from a solar flare that happened in 2022, right? And in that event, the solar flare actually bursted away from us on the dark side of the sun, but was so intense and powerful that felt the effects or saw the effects on our network services on the surface of the Earth. Like, so it shot away from us in space, but it still
Right.
took out our satellite comms. So if it hadn't been facing us, like it would have been lights out.
Catastrophic.
Yeah. So the story I wrote in that is kind of like a survivalist guide, like the first 48 hours, if something like that were to happen, a total like power disruption that just doesn't come back. What do you do from the place where you're at when that happens to get to a remote safe space? So it has all kinds of referential information about physical structures and how to look for safe exits and determine like if it's a solid structure, if it's going to collapse, things like that. First aid, self-defense, food preparation, how to deal with like the mass panic, everyone just running around, um, and then how to actually like physically traverse to a remote space, and then survivalist wilderness guys, how to build a shelter, how to gather food, things like that. So that was my first story that I wrote. In chapter edition 11, which came out last year in September, that the theme of that whole book surrounded mental health, right?
Mm.
So the stories in that were about people's individual journeys, and the healing and the empowerment they got through those journeys, right? And in my own chapter, I talked about my experience from getting divorced, losing my job, going into the pandemic, being homeless twice, right, and then being diagnosed with major depression and CPTSD, and how I had to
Did you say
navigate
PTSD
complex PTSD. Yeah,
from?
there's a whole bunch of stuff in my personal life.
So a lot of people consider PTSD when they think about it to be war related, but is that, or was it just other things?
No, certainly there are things that happen in the arena of war that can be traumatic. Absolutely.
So you were in the Army?
No. My PTSD is complex, hence the CPTSD, and it
Okay.
has a lot to do with a lot of mental and emotional trauma that happened cumulative over a series of time in smaller chunks, which is what makes it complex.
Right.
And so it builds to a point of what's referred to as a grip stress. And then in that tension of grip stress, there's a breaking point. And that's where I had reached.
Hey, Michael.
So, yeah, that's what I talked about in the last book. So this next book that I'm working on now is going to be in a completely third different type of subject domain, in which I'm sharing an autobiographical account of professional development. So each and every role and organization opportunity I had, how did I approach that? What experience and skills did I gain there? What was I able to extract value from the role and the organization to then expand myself and upskill and grow professionally onward and upward. Right? So that's the subject of my next book.
So the other two, you had chapters in it, is that right?
Yeah, I had a single chapter with a
Got
bunch of
it.
others that had also had single chapters. But this next book will just be me, and it'll be the whole book by myself.
Good for you. Mike, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I sure can.
Welcome.
Thanks for joining.
It is such a pleasure to join you this afternoon. The topic of the show or the talk is particularly interesting for me. I'm extremely interested in generative conversation and the concept of steel manning and, more important, star manning. And coming to a conversation and looking to bridge build instead of sort of win, whatever that means. So
Absolutely.
I am very interested in your ongoing discussions, and will be awaiting the next one with bated breath. From a professional perspective, I've been in tech for 30 years, 20 of which I've spent in cybersecurity. I spent
Nice.
13 of those years as a CISO for a international bank. And so I'm looking to get back in, in a role for where I can move the needle on assisting companies to basically translate the current landscape, the vulnerability landscape and threat landscape into actionable paths that the decision makers can do.
Okay. Mike, so I am going to be very honest with you. I don't know what steel manning and star manning are. So can you kind of shed some light on that? I was going to look it up after the call. But
yeah, I actually posted it in the comments, but the concept of steel manning is, in essence, taking what you believe the other person's idea or concept is, and in essence saying, this is what I believe it to be. This is my understanding. And the reason that's important is, if you're going to have a generative conversation, you kind of have to understand what that person's point of view is, instead of just bringing in your preconceptions, right? Because we
right.
all come to something, and I posted also, we all want to be seen, heard, and valued.
Yes.
And so that's kind of where the star manning comes in, and I'll put that. I'll come to that in a second. But the idea is, so I need to understand your point of view, and Covey says seek to understand, seek first to understand, then to be understood. And again, I think that's important if we're going to have a generative conversation. Star manning is going a further step and basically seeing what that person's, it's more than personality. It's kind of trying to put yourself in their shoes. So it's embodying kind of where they're at. A very wise friend of mine once said, Mike, the issue is very rarely the issue. Meaning we bring to a conversation or a situation, well, it can be a plus and minus, right? We can bring a bunch of positive experiences, or we bring both, but we can bring positive and negative experiences. And a lot of times when we are kind of facing friction, there's a disconnect with that person may be exhibiting something that he's acting out versus that's not necessarily his true self, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely.
So it's really trying to be as give that person as much grace and hold him in that space as possible. Him and her, sorry.
Okay. I think that that's a great topic for a full discussion.
Yes.
If and you don't have to be on camera, Mike, but if you would like to be a guest and lead that specific conversation, I think Greg and I would both welcome it.
Absolutely.
I will give it some thought, and I'll talk to ChatGPT. I'm actually using ChatGPT in ways probably most people aren't. I'm not using it as an oracle. I'm using it as what I call, this is a whole nother discussion, but I'm using it as a form of transhumanism, meaning that I'm using it as an idea generator for me. So I'm expanding what I could do, and the time saving is incredible, because otherwise I'm dealing with sort of a blank mind or a blank space. Now I can say, hey, give me 10 ideas, and out of those 10 ideas, give me 10 questions. And out of those 10 questions, then all these neurons start to fire. So I'm doing that in a lot of different areas. But I'll certainly give it a think, and I'll get back to both of you or either one of you.
I would love to have that conversation deeper, and I'm not the expert on it, and I would love to have you guide it, but it's up to you. ChatGPT AI in general is wonderful, but it's also a little bit scary, because where are the jobs going once everything is automated?
Well, there's two things that are going, well, there's a bunch of things going on, but one of the things that is going on in my mind, ChatGPT is a tool. It can be used as a hammer, meaning, it could be used like a hammer to hit a nail or to hit someone over the head. In my opinion, what's going on, we're early in the hype cycle, and again, this is just me, this is my view of the world, that we're forcing people to be more productive. So corporate America is saying, I want to do more with less, and more with less, and ChatGPT is the way I'm going to accomplish that. Now, first of all, I don't know if all jobs, or certain jobs that some level of that will be true. But I think we're a little early on, and I think I call it being over your skis. We're assuming that productivity is going to be increased by X. I would think that you'd want to do some sort of investigation to is that true, given with the population of my company. And I mean, it can do some interesting and wonderful things. It can speed, certainly bring productivity, and expand our horizons. But I think it has to be approached very carefully. And I've written 2 articles, one on privacy and one on security. You can find them on my profile. But I'm pretty concerned that we're not having a careful approach, and we're kind of going headlong to monetize and so forth. And I think some people understand that the future casters among us that are trying to connect the dots and say, what's the ramification of this going to be? And I think so. There is a rightful fear, if you will, that it will take jobs, but just like the internet and other things, I think it will also spawn jobs. And I would submit that anyone should be jumping on and just learning as much as they can so they're not caught flat-footed. Even if you're employed, that you're not caught flat-footed, or I'm not saying become a dinosaur, but
that was my topic earlier.
Yeah, you will need to keep up with the tech, just like any other tech. So
Yeah, I
Agreed.
would definitely want to add to that. Certainly, what we're seeing in the last year or two, and probably for the next year or two, is just an incredible amount of FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. Everyone is signaling that they're AI powered and AI enabled, and what they're doing is they're just slapping a veneer of like a chatbot on their website or their app or whatnot, and it's not actually AI, right? But they want to give the appearance that they're part of the AI movement, right? The fear of missing out. They don't want to be the last person at the dance,
Right.
to let their peers and their market know that they are also AI. But what they're doing in the moment is not actual AI. It's just giving the veneer and appearance of AI.
Right.
Also, to Mike's point, right, like a lot of people don't understand the tool and therefore are using it incorrectly. And they're not getting the yield that they want out of it or that they could, right? It's a very powerful tool, even in the stage that it is, right? And it's going to get more powerful. But if you don't understand the tool that you're using, you're not going to use it properly. And then to Mike's final point, and then I'll let you chime in again. AI is not going away, right? And so we have to learn to embrace it as part of our personal and professional lives in order to stay relevant and not be left behind and shut out from it. And to that point, like this whole past week, I've been sharing information about how people who know nothing about AI and have no skill in AI can learn about it, get some sort of competency skill with it, and find entry points into work with AI.
yeah, I'm actually taking a course on an AI agent from Hugging Face as we speak, because I wanted to get underneath the covers and understand sort of the inner workings, because in 2025 is going to be the year of the agent. And that's where I think we're going to see explosive growth and maturity. Because one of the issues I see is that if you look at the what they call frontier models, they're pre-trained. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means they have a narrative. I may not want that narrative,
Right.
or I may not want to use that narrative. So one of the things that you're seeing is the ability to use the model and train it yourself. And I think that's actually going to be the power. I'm calling them SLMs, not LLMs. So that's small language model. And you're feeding it like in a corporation, you would feed it your information as opposed to this general information. Because we're not at a place where first of all, we don't even understand how our brains work. So it's going to be hard to clone that into a machine right now. But we're sort of we're trying to emulate at least the output of that, and I think to some degree that we're successful. But I don't think you can treat it like an actual logic machine. And if you understand how this works, it's basically a math processor. It's actually kind of what these models do, and they're being trained to basically find the next. It's called tokenization, and it does a bunch of magic internally, but it, in essence, is trying. I call it the next best guess, and that's why you get hallucinations. That's why you get things sometimes that you ask it, and it had nothing to, its answer had nothing to do with what you asked it. And again, they have pre and post processors to try to eliminate some of that stuff. And they're improving day by day. That's the other thing, is this stuff is moving so fast. You really kind of have to stay on it to keep.
Right.
Absolutely. So you said you're using Chat GPT. Have you tried DeepSeek, or have you looked at DeepSeek?
I will not touch DeepSeek on principle because I do not want to feed the CCP.
Okay. I haven't touched it either.
It's also been breached or was breached, so I call it Deep Leak now. And yeah, I'm in a strange place because being in cybersecurity, I have to be able to examine what's going on in the network.
Yes.
And at the same time, I'm a privacy advocate. The other thing is, of course, as a cybersecurity professional, I also want to protect data. So I'm very protective of privacy. And my concern with DeepSeek is that anything that, my understanding, anything in the Chinese ecosystem can or may or whatever have the opportunity to be fed back up into the governing body there, and that's not something I necessarily want to feed it at this point.
So is that why people are against TikTok? Because I don't understand the entire.
TikTok's
TikTok.
a little deeper, and I would also never. Again, this I'm not a lawyer, and I have no knowledge of exactly how DeepSeek app works on your phones, but I wouldn't install it on my phone because they actually tell you what they're going to gather, and to me that's way too invasive. So it's very similar. My understanding with TikTok is it's something similar. So it was gathering, whether you know it or not, all of these algorithms are gathering a behavior, and over time they can actually predict a pretty accurate picture of your pattern of life, as it's called. And so I don't necessarily be feeding that to a foreign power. To be frank with you, I don't necessarily want to feed that to YouTube or anything else. But sometimes when you're using these tools, you have to kind of understand that that's what's happening. It's supposed to be to feed you a better product, but you are the product typically in a lot of these tools.
So being someone in cybersecurity, Mike, and getting into one of our deep conversations for a second, what are your thoughts about our Treasury Department and big balls?
Well, before you get into that, I just wanted to agree with Mike and share the same sentiment. Right, I keep a very small digital footprint on purpose. I don't have as much depth as Mike does in cybersecurity, but I have enough of it to know. And I do read terms of service, and I encourage everyone to do that as well. Right, just the grotesque amount of data mining that's being done by technology in our personal lives is, quite frankly, shocking. And much like Mike, I try to minimize that as much as I can, because someone else is making money of what I do and how I do during my day. So, and then also to that point, right, like then it gets collected locally on my smartwatch or my phone or on my PC, but then that gets aggregated up into these huge databases, and then where does that go? Right? Who's looking at that information? And that's further behind the curtain that we can only have glimpses at, or maybe speculate, and may not know for sure. And to Mike's point, right, we want to make sure that privacy is protected, that the information is secured, right, and it doesn't fall into bad actors or used for nefarious purposes. So I just wanted to share that same sentiment and support everything that Mike said.
And Gregory, I'm also a proponent of our data is being sold with or without our consent. And so this is why you get your robocalls and so forth. There is a potential way of stopping that through the use of blockchain and actually allowing us to monetize our data. but we as a citizenry have to stand up and get after our representatives to say, look, enough of this, scraping our data from all of these places. To your point, terms of service. My only issue with terms of service is that some of that stuff gets buried, or maybe in a third page off
Oh,
of the
sure.
original terms of service. And of
Yeah.
course, that's their fallback position as well. On page 55 of our terms of service, it says in very small print that you can't read, we have
Right.
the right to resell your data. And so I don't know that this is going to be kind of an ongoing battle that's going to rage. But I do feel like we do need to stand up for ourselves and privacy and do better. Europe is, I don't know if you're familiar, but it has something called GDPR, and they're also working on some other privacy things. California has one privacy law. The rest of the country, there's no federal one. And to be frank with you, I really do think that that's something we as a citizenry should be pushing for. If you're in the United States, if you're not, you should be pushing it for whatever country you're part of.
I agree.
So, William, what was your question again?
You being a part of cybersecurity, what are your thoughts on us granting access to a non-elected official to our Treasury Department?
Okay, I'm going to be controversial here for a second.
That's good.
Because because I got in trouble, I actually posted something on LinkedIn about this. And actually it was sort of indirect because Doge was supposedly defaced, the government website. And so I said, well, show me the receipts. And there was a screenshot that someone had purportedly done. And I don't know if you know, but I can go in developer mode on any browser, and I can basically make that website say anything I want to on the local browser. And again, I'm going into the weeds a little bit, but I didn't have proof. So that's so my thing is, if this guy is indeed a nefarious individual, was he the one that actually had access? I don't have any information on this. This is part of my problem. And in general, part of my problem is getting what I consider factual, solid information, because if you look at almost any news source, there's some sort of narrative. You can call it left, right, blue, blue, red. So I'm having difficulty really getting to the actual facts. I don't have anyone that I can trust in government, that I have a relationship with. So my question is, if he actually indeed had access, who are we going to hold responsible? And this is a little harsh, but are we going to hold him responsible, or are we going to hold the guy that gave him access? And if that guy was forced to, that's another problem, right? And again, I
Right.
don't have answers to these questions. As a cybersecurity guy, there's something called least privilege. Now, my understanding, and again, what I'm hearing in the news, and that's all my current source of information,
Do
is
you get your
that
news from multiple sources or one source?
I get it from all over. I get it from podcasts. I get it from I listen to both, CNN
Every
and
side.
Fox and on and on.
Okay.
But my point is, yes, I do try to hold both sides of the conversation, which is fun. So my question is, if that, what's the truth? And because I mean, part of my thing is the reason why hasn't, if this stuff is indeed true, why hasn't it been uncovered before? About waste, fraud, and abuse. And the founders, my understanding was the founders wanted a smaller federal government and have a little more power in the states, and kind of drive that stuff down. And unfortunately, and I feel for anyone that has been riffed, believe me, I understand that feeling. I just I don't have the answers, because I'm also sort of their employer, but I wasn't told that I was employing them. And that our money was going in all these different areas. And I'm sorry, but I think the government owes us an accounting of where our money goes as taxpayers. And
I
that's
don't think I
been
didn't even disagree with that.
so getting back to the original question, it's basically I don't know. And
Okay.
I would say if it's true that he was a black hat, probably shouldn't be sitting in down well, first of all, he probably shouldn't be sitting down in front of a government computer at all. But if he
Right.
was, my understanding was the guy that got access was not him. That again, I don't, like I said, I don't have good information, and I don't use CNN or Fox as my news source because
I don't think either. I don't think any of us have good information
yeah.
The
on
issue
what's
that
going
I
on right
have,
now.
the issue I have with what's going on is that, for better or for worse, safeguards and controls and auditors were put in place as part of the system as checks and balances. Right now, whether they were good at that or bad at that is certainly open to debate, and there are use cases and examples of both. Right, but at least the role was there and it had a function to be a safeguard, a checkpoint, right, and a control. With the steadfast just hatcheting of those positions that the current administration is doing at breakneck speed, it is frightening in and of itself. But what happens as a result of that is even more concerning, right? Just eliminating all of those checks and balances um, on purpose, right? What's the end game by doing that? And it's not to reduce the spend, not at all. That's just the the little puppet that's being chirping to get us to distract from the real reason why those things are being eliminated.
The other scary part, outside of them having access to the treasury, is that you can spend $250 million and buy the presidency. You know, that's concerning to me.
Right, and I think the targeting
Mike?
of the social services aspect, while completely ignoring, right, the repeated reports that the Pentagon has just missing trillions of dollars, right, through several audits, right, and the fact that most corporations are like within the top 5 of the biggest recipients of federal funding. Right, just those two elements alone kind of make it very hypocritical for the justification of cuts to social services, which have a positive intent, right, and do support a large number of Americans.
Well, and Gregory, I think I'm going to try to offer a counterpoint. I don't feel comfortable agreeing with you that this is being done in name but not in deed, or giving intent to whatever's going on that's not reduction, or that it is. But most of why
I will challenge that each and every time. There's a reason why it's being done. And it's
Yeah, but let him finish, Greg.
Well, if you can show me receipts, I'm happy to look at them. And I'm serious. I want to be as open, and like I said I want to try to understand your position and why. And part of that is actually beyond the, I don't want to use the word tribalism, but beyond whatever space that you're in that leads you to believe that. Is there a way we can kind of strip as much of the emotional impact, for instance, or can we get down to the sort of bare facts? And if you can point me to bare facts, I'm happy to go down that rabbit hole with you.
Sure.
But one of the things I'm thinking is that 2016 and 2024 were a mandate or a sign that we weren't okay with what was going on in Washington. Again, not red or blue or purple. That wasn't okay. Now, if what's happening is not what we agreed to, we can have a separate discussion. But my sense is the American public is not okay. And to your point, yeah, let's go after the military industrial complex. I have no problem doing that. But I mean, there's money being spent all over the place, and where I don't know who gets to determine what cuts are okay. And to your auditing thing, my question, one of the things that we have to do in cyber is we have to have a third party auditing come in. So we have an internal auditing department. And by the way, there's a situation in the company country of origin. So they force the auditing to have a dotted line directly to the board, so not to report to the CEO. I'm not aware of how these auditing things work inside the government, but if they're part of the federal government, then they're still under the same umbrella, as opposed to bringing someone completely third party in that has no skin in the game to do the audit. Because to your point, and the military has failed audits before, so why hasn't anything been done? And all these are good questions. And like I said, if you can bring the receipts, I'm happy to entertain them.
Yeah, and I'm not opposed to having a more efficient, especially financially efficient government. Not by any means. Like I'm on board with that. But the targeting that's being done and the justification for that targeting, when in actuality there are other places that can be cut, which are less impactful to larger groups of Americans, right? It's not being done in an intelligent and objective way. It's being done with a specific agenda. Is my point.
And I think, I don't know, my sense is, and I don't know what the solution is, but transparency, I think, is like a lot of times we're seeing a result that we don't understand where the decisions have been made. We're not seeing the transparency that I think we should. But yeah, I'm happy to discuss this
Sure.
maybe in another show.
discussion.
Yeah, I think we're hitting the 2 hour mark, and I'm kind of getting fidgety in my chair.
All right, but can I say one more thing that's just controversial to Mike?
Sure.
Mike, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. You said 2016 and 2024 show that we weren't happy with the way the government was working. What if I pushed back on you and said in 2016 and 2024, we had 2 very qualified women that were running, and the country just wasn't ready for a woman president? Because in both cases, I can tell you this, that they said, I don't like the way she laughs, or there's something about her, and both women, right? There's something about her. I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it. But the qualifications were there. So you don't have to answer it, because it will take us into an entire another hour.
Yeah, I don't want to start down that. I don't want to start down that rabbit hole right now.
But yeah, that's something that I keep thinking about. Were we just not ready for that? And because we weren't ready for that, people didn't come out in droves like they should have. Biden was obviously too old. I mean, he froze on stage, and that was over for me. Like, he looked like a mannequin. But anyway.
By the way, on that, and again, I apologize in advance if I upset anyone. I believe those last 4 years were actually elder abuse, in my opinion. But that's neither here nor there.
You thought Biden was elder abuse?
Yeah. I can't prove that, but I mean, the way he seemed, like when he was on stage and he'd go to the wrong place to get off stage, something was going on that I don't think was okay. And we saw that at the leaders when he went to check out now some of that could be optics, you say, but
Yeah,
Right.
because there's been plenty of optics of those kinds of moments on with both candidates that were running, for sure.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. So, but I would agree with both of you that like, at that age, right, that's in that role. I think it's too much to ask for a person.
It was him freezing up in the debate when he couldn't answer a question, and then he came out with something totally bizarre. We fixed Medicare, but I think the question was about abortion. I don't remember what it was. But anyway, you guys, it's been 2 hours. Um, any final words, Mike? Greg?
No, thank you for allowing me to be on stage. I'm more than happy to have further discussions, as long as they're in
Absolutely.
good faith and generative and mutually respectful. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Hey,
we want the different perspectives, so never like apologize.
yeah, I do appreciate you engaging in the comments and then absolutely coming on stage. Certainly, we're looking for that kind of collaborative conversation, and certainly welcoming, encouraging different perspectives and viewpoints and vantage points and things like that. Mike, I would love to have a conversation with you at a later time, getting into uh, the cybersecurity aspect that we kind of touched upon, like privacy and data protection, things like that.
Yeah, I definitely
Be
would
That's
love
an
to have him
important
back.
conversation to have as well.
be happy to.
Yeah.
All right. For everybody else out there, Greg and I will figure out when the next UBU Live conversation will occur, who our special guests will be, and I hope this is our launch party. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you want more, and Greg and I will definitely go deeper into some more controversial conversations because we want to hear how you feel about it. We know how we feel. Actually, I don't know how you feel, Greg, but that's it for
Um,
tonight.
yeah, I'm not shy about expressing how I think and feel about things.
I
I
know.
also would like to share this. Thank you, everyone, for attending today and participating. Um, part of today was Bill and I getting to know more about each other, just kind of in a live environment. So, and kind of what we're doing on LinkedIn. So, I had a great time, and again, thanks, Mike, for also coming on stage. And we do
Next
have
time,
some,
Kenneth.
yeah, we'd like to get Kenny up here for sure. So yeah, please be on the lookout for more announcements, and definitely there is more coming. Thank you again.
Thank you, guys. Good night, Greg.
Good night. Good night, everybody.